Hello and welcome back to the second episode of our Q&A series. I'm going to try and do it every Thursday, so eventually it may be called Q&A Thursday, but for now it's just our Q&A video. I'd like to say a big thank you for all your questions in the last episode, our first episode. It was really great, some amazing feedback from you all and some great questions for this episode as well. Now, if you'd like your question answered on this series, the quickest and easiest way is on our Instagram. On around a Monday or Tuesday, we'll put up a question box on our stories where you can submit your questions, which is what most of the questions here today have come from. Alternatively, leave your question down in the comment section or email it us at info@kibblewatches.co.uk. And just like last episode, down in the description, all the questions are going to be listed, including timestamps to skip to the specific one. So if you're not interested in a certain question, don't worry, go in the description, see which ones you are interested in and skip to those. Now, before we dive in, let's have a quick look at what is on my wrist. Now, I have recently, or probably for the last year, had a huge obsession with vintage Mido, and this is a beautiful example of a 1950s Mido multi-fork power wind featuring a really gorgeous dial, and it's oversized at about 37.5 millimeters, so quite a rare and interesting piece. It has a signed crown, screw down case back, a really nice Mido movement inside. It's a really gorgeous example, one I wanted for a while, and I was lucky enough to find one. So here it is on my wrist. With that all out of the way nice and quick, let's dive into the questions. So the first question is actually a combination of 3 of your questions, because it's something I get asked a lot. So, where do you buy your watches from? That's a question from Try15am. I'm butchering everyone's names, you'll see it on screen. If you can give away some trade secrets, where do you source your watches from Ghostrifter. And what is your method for finding good deals? Do you mostly look online or in person? And that's from Iberia Before Us. So thank you very much for the questions. It's something we get asked a lot, to be honest, and for varying reasons. Some people want to get into the trade, some people just want to find where we get our deals from. So the easiest way to answer this is the way we've built this business is slightly different to some other businesses out there. So some businesses buy directly from trade, that's all they buy from. Whereas we buy probably 80 to 85% of our watches from you guys and girls, the collectors themselves. The reason being, we just prefer it that way. You know, it's better to deal with a collector because usually the watches are better looked after. They also have a bit more history and knowledge of the watch themselves because they're genuinely interested. And it's just a nicer feeling as well, because at the end of the day, if we can buy a watch from a collector, most of the time you guys and girls end up putting that money back in us eventually for another watch. So it works out good for you, but also good for the business. So it's a win-win scenario. So 80 to 85% from you guys. The rest is sort of a combination of everywhere, really. We buy from obviously other dealers, so within the trade we go to markets when obviously all that's open. We buy online at auctions all over the world, eBay, but be careful with eBay. We say eBay and people go, see, they buy from eBay. The difference is, obviously, we've been doing this for a long time. We've handled and viewed many watches. We know what we're looking for. Now, do we still get stung? 100%. Everyone is at the risk of getting stung on eBay. But just be careful, know what you're looking for, research a lot before you buy off eBay, and that's my only advice if you're going to go down that route. Alternatively, yes, you pay a premium to buy from a dealer like ourselves, but you're getting something that's backed by the dealer. We offer our warranty, we've looked at it, we've guaranteed it, it's been serviced most of the time, unless it's obviously a modern watch, and all of those things that come with the package. And in response to Iberia Before Us, do you mostly look online or in person? Obviously right now it's almost exclusively online, because obviously we can't do anything in person. Before that it was a lot more in person. We had dealers coming in to the office occasionally, bringing their stock and showing us, and then we'd make some deals, or we'd go to different trade shows or whatever it may be. But also when we buy off collectors, because we are the dealer, we get the watch sent to us first before we pay out for it. So we check it over and assess it, because there's things that obviously a lot of you guys and girls, as knowledgeable as you are, and some of you are way more knowledgeable than I'll ever be because you've been doing this far longer, but there's certain things you will miss as well. We all miss things, and it's a case of us looking at it and assessing it before we go ahead with a deal. We're very honest in regards to where we say our pricing is at before you send the watch. So we say we are here with a range of about here in case there is anything wrong. So that way we don't get the watch and do what some dealers do, where they get it and go, oh, there's a scratch here that wasn't shown, so that means it's worth 20% less. We won't do that to you, so you haven't got to worry. But there is obviously that room for margin just in case it is slightly different to what the phone photos look like. So the next question, any pieces that you regret selling, and why was that? From Mr. Two Dime. Thank you for the great question. I regret most watches I sell because at the end of the day, as I said, I'm a collector. I love watches for what they are. You know, I've got some watches here on the table, quite a few Omegas, an amazing Elise Nardin, which recently put on a different strap to try that out. I'll put some photos up on screen. It looks incredible. So I really do fall in love with a lot of the watches we sell, so I regret most of them. But to answer your question, one that sort of sticks with me the most is probably a very gorgeous 1973 Omega Geneve with a gorgeous red dial, often called spider dials. I'll put it on screen. I think I've got a few photos hidden away. So the reason I regret this one is because it was a gorgeous watch for one, and it wasn't particularly awfully expensive. It didn't cost us a lot, and we didn't sell it for an awful lot. You know, the margin was very minimal. But oftentimes it is on these sort of vintage Omegas. We don't make a lot of money. The point was, I absolutely loved it, and it's the kind of watch that was so cool. You know, when you're wearing it, watch people know that you've got something special, and non-watch people even go, what is that? So yeah, it's a watch I regret selling and wish I had kept. Next question. Obviously viewings are not possible, but are you also providing a try before you buy option like AWC? And that is from Antique Watch UK. So for those of you who don't follow him, go follow him. His name's John, and he runs Antique Watch Company, which is in Clerkenwell, where our office is based. And they've had the shop for like 47 years, huge amount of history, good friend of ours, and has taught me a lot. So thank you very much, John. Big respect from us. So what John's referring to there, the try before you buy it, don't get it confused, because the way he's worded it, you can't get the watch and then pay for it after. As far as I'm aware, unless John has gone absolutely crazy, in which case I'll go take all of his watches now and pay him later. So there we go. But what he's saying is it's like a refund policy, basically. So you buy the watch, we send it. If you don't like it, you can send it back and we'll refund you. We're offering the same thing because obviously everything going on right now, we're not having you at the office to come have a look because it's just not safe, and also I don't think legally you can unless it's a click and collect, which may also change soon. But yeah, we're offering you the same thing. So if you buy the watch and you get it, and after 3 or 4 days you 100% know it's not for you, and you haven't put a dent in the watch or smashed the crystal, by all means we'll take it back and refund you. That's not a problem. Next question. What's your opinion on future investment pieces on the next 10 years? By Dean Williamson, Dean Williams, 1966. Hope you're doing well, Dean, and thank you for the question. As always, I will preface any investment question with the same thing I always say: watches shouldn't be seen as investments. Do they turn out to be 100%, and can you make money on them? Of course, it's what our business is. But watches are expensive toys, as Roman Shaft puts it, and I think that's exactly that. The market can go up, it can go down, it can crash, anything can happen. Tomorrow your Rolex could be worth a lot less than what it is today. We just don't know. It's not a guaranteed thing. So buy what you like, first and foremost. That's the one that's going to have the best investment in 10 years because you're not going to sell it. So result. But to not dodge your question, I would probably say the Rolex Explorer 2, specifically the 16550, which usually develops the creamy lume and the creamy dial. It's a transitional period watch. I think they made it for 3 years. Really, really gorgeous piece. For one, it's a lovely looking watch, but also a huge potential for investment, really. Again, it could go completely south and it could fall through the roof, but right now I think with the way the market's going, that's a pretty solid investment in the next 10 years, and you'll be looking on a pretty healthy margin. Another one, slightly more known and something that doesn't add any value now, but I think could, and they're Tritinova dials. So some of you might be like, what has he just said? Tritinova? That's not a thing. There was a time period where Rolex was transitioning from using tritium to superluminova, or luminova in general, and Rolex had a backlog of obviously tritium signed dials, and they would, instead of just throwing these dials away, they used them but filled them with luminova. So at the bottom it would say T Swiss T for tritium, but the actual dial and hands were luminova. So it's not a service dial, it's not fake or anything like that. It's something Rolex actually did, and we had a GMT in a little while ago which was a Tritinova. They did it in a GMT, Explorer 1, and I think potentially Submariners. Don't quote me on that, there's a few different ones they did it in. So I would say that right now doesn't have any added value, but I think it's one of those little nuances that people are going to go crazy for, like a dot over 90 on a Speedmaster, right? That adds a significant value on a vintage Speedmaster. So I think those small nuances, if you can find watches with those slight increment changes that really aren't anything spectacular, but they make a big difference in terms of the way collectors view them, I think that could be something for future investment. And to be honest, most Rolexes. I think most Rolexes are going to be worth a lot more than what they are today in the next 10 years. Next question. I'm over 6 foot. Can I have that Mido, says Wound Gears. So the Mido I am wearing, which I think I did a wrist check, I'm pretty sure I did. I have an ad for it and I'll show it here on screen. It says something about, for the gentleman over 6 foot or something like that, because it's oversized at 37.5 mil. And I made the joke that I'm like 4 foot because I'm quite short. I'm not really 4 foot, but you get the point. So a lot of people who are over 6 foot said they'd happily take it off my wrist. Yeah, you can't have it, it's mine, I love it, sorry. Next, a continuation question from Gasonian, who asked one of the first questions. So, what are your favourite watch barn find stories from your business or others? So for those of you who don't know, a barn find is like a first to market kind of watch, or something that's got a special story to it, all original. There's many things that fall into barn find. I find it a very interesting thing that people throw out there. It's like using the term patina. It covers so many different things. There's no sort of one thing ticks all for the word. So a couple of really cool stories. Let's just go based on that. My other Mido, I'll put a photo of it on screen. It was one I found on eBay, absolutely battered, 3 photos, and I think they didn't even put like dimensions or anything like that, but I thought it was something special. And I managed to get it for like virtually nothing and got John to clean it up, and it looks incredible now. So that was just a really cool watch, first to market. It was from their family. I didn't get to find out much more than that, unfortunately, but a story that I think will interest a lot of you, and I'll leave a link in the description to an article I wrote about it on our website. Now, the title of the article was "The Man with the Red Book of Secret NATO Codes and His Tudor." So I was very fortunate to get offered a Tudor, which had an engraving on the back of Jay Ringzell, and it was from the Ugandan government, and he was a printer, and there's the whole story in the article. Go give it a read. But anyway, we got this watch, and I didn't know it had an engraving on the back. It was sold to me without photos of the case back for reasons of the engraving, because engravings devalue the watch in most cases, unfortunately. So I was a bit annoyed when I got it, because it wasn't obviously disclosed as such. But anyway, I put a photo in a group chat that I have with my dad and a friend who actually commented in the last one, Watch This Space, Chris. And they started doing randomly some research on what was on the case back. And they found an article of this gentleman who basically stopped Idi Amin, which was a Ugandan sort of dictator, getting NATO codes that were in this red book that he got. Go read the article, it goes in a lot more detail than what I've just said. But anyway, the story is we got the watch and we found all this information. I did a load of research, found out as much as I could about this guy, and it was so amazing to hear this guy's story through this watch. And unfortunately, I couldn't get hold of any of the original family members, and I was searching for quite a while before I even put it up for sale, because ideally I wanted to return it to the family, if at all possible. And after loads of looking around, emailing, I couldn't find anyone. So I put the watch up for sale, and a very good collector of Tudors actually picked it up, and he was over the moon with it. He actually traded in a couple of his pieces to get it. And he enjoyed it ever since. This month, actually, not that long ago, I get a phone call randomly here in the office from a lady who had found my article online after doing a load of research over lockdown of her family tree. And she wanted the watch, you know, for the family. And after going back and forth and talking about it all and everything, it was her great uncle, or great uncle, but I believe great uncle. And, you know, speaking about the story, I got a few things wrong in the article, so we'll hopefully get an update soon. But anyway, long story short, I managed to get the watch back off the collector who I'd sold it to, was more than happy to see it go back to the original family. So this watch that I had over a year ago, I did all this research, a really incredible story. As I said, read the article, I think you'll enjoy it. And it managed to go back to the original family after all this. And this gentleman was a huge part of stopping basically Idi Amin, a dictator in Uganda. You know, it was quite a significant gentleman who owned this watch and was presented to him on one of the coronations. You know, super interesting, super cool. That's probably my number one so far, but there are a couple of others, unfortunately, I can't speak about because the owners of the watch don't want to be disclosed, and I sort of had to agree to that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's many stories out there. Maybe one day I get to share with you guys, but that's the most interesting that I can reveal right now. Next question, what would be your dream person to interview on the podcast? And that's from Kibsnick, my dad. If you're not following him, go follow him. He's got a great collection, and we're actually working on selling almost all of his collection to get him the latest Speedmaster that's just been released. So I'm super excited for that to happen, so keep an eye out for that. So for those of you who don't know, we're hoping to start up a podcast soon, and I'm in the works with a gentleman who has done this kind of stuff before. He's an audio technician and hopefully going to be a pretty big part of the podcast, as opposed to just someone who edits and all this kind of stuff. But pretty much, I'm hoping to do it, and I'm hoping to do it right. So keep an eye out for that. There's a lot of podcasts out there at the moment, and a lot of watch-related podcasts, and they're brilliant. I'm not going to go deep into the watch-related podcast. You know, it's going to be kind of separate from Kibble Watches to a certain degree. Still going to be watch-related. We're still going to have watch guests on, but the whole goal is going to be about business and about marketing and about branding. You know, finding out what made people do what they did to their brand. So a guest I'm hoping to have on, and maybe this will be the first time I've said it, is Nicholas of Fitter's Watches, you know, going deep into his branding and how he's done what he's done as opposed to the watches themselves. I think that's the interesting point. For me anyway, and hopefully some of you guys and girls find that interesting. But the dream person to be on would have to be Gary Vaynerchuk. He's the master marketer. You know, I've read all of his books. I've been a very big fan. And just like most people out there, when I first started watching him, I really disliked him. I thought he was arrogant. But after watching him for a long time, complete opposite. He seems like the most down-to-earth, humble person probably in that industry, and genuinely out there to try and help people and give people as much great advice as possible. And he has influenced me and the business so much through his books and his videos. So it'd be great to have him on, mainly just to thank him for everything he's done, but also to really go deep and pick his brain on certain subjects that I have in mind. Next question, what's the least expensive watch you own in your collection by Ahorn29? Thank you for the question. A lot of my collection really isn't that expensive. There may be some watches in there that are more expensive now, but I've owned them for like 3 or 4 years and I paid very little for them. But the least expensive one in my collection has to be my first ever watch, my first ever automatic watch. And it's a 1970s Citizen Eagle 7. I'll throw a photo of it up on screen. A really gorgeous watch. I think they're great. We've got one coming up soon, a little gold plated, really cleaned example. They could still be had for under £100 in good condition. They're starting to creep over there if they've got the bracelet and things like that. Sorry about that, the battery died. So yeah, Citizen Eagle 7 is my least expensive, and you can still get them for a good deal today if you find them. The next question, what's your favorite watch of 2020 by Source Watches? Thank you very much for the question. I hope you're well. It's got to be the Omega Speedmaster 50th anniversary for the Silver Snoopy. Really great watch, really cool design, really cool with the case back. It's just nice to see a brand like Omega do something very right, you know. They took a risk, they made it a bit more playful, a bit more fun than what they'd usually do, and they also didn't make it limited edition. I think they just ticked all the boxes with this release, and I've got to applaud them for it. And the final question, I think there's a large entry barrier into the watch selling industry. What can help get in by Lujo Watches? Apologies for butchering your name if I did. Yeah, thank you for a really, really good question, and it's an interesting point. There is certainly a barrier into getting into this trade, and it's a difficult one for many reasons. There's the financial barrier, so having enough money to start this properly. It's not a cheap industry to get in, it's a cash-rich industry, meaning you need a lot of money in the bank at most times to be able to buy watches when they come in. Otherwise, you're constantly in catch-up with everyone else. So there's that barrier, the financial barrier. There's also the sort of acceptance barrier within the trade of other dealers, and it's something I battled with a lot in the early days. There's a lot of dealers out there who are not keen on new people entering the industry, especially if you're young, and they deem you as not knowing your stuff. So a few of the guys early days with me would completely discredit me as a watch dealer, and deem that because I'd only been doing it a few years, there's no way I had enough knowledge to actually do it properly and understand watches and make the right choices and buy the right things and not sell redials as original and all these kind of factors. So there's that side of it as well. My advice to you is try and shut out the second one, the barrier of acceptance. Don't focus on those. Focus on the people who are supporting of you. There are dealers out there who are completely accepting of new people into the industry. You know, find those kind of guys and girls and stick onto them. You know, find as much as you can out of them and learn from them. And just get hands-on experience with as much as possible, as many watches as possible. I worked retail and in auction I was able to handle hundreds of watches, literally hundreds a month. So sometimes it was upwards of sort of 500 watches in a month, handling, inspecting, writing about that kind of stuff. And from that, the experience I gained was huge. But also buying and selling my own pieces as well, you know, making those mistakes, buying the redials and not realizing they're redials until you inspect it. You know, those are the kind of nuggets of information that you can only gain via experience, and it's an experience-heavy industry. So definitely be hands-on. You know, take the risks and surround yourself with good people who are in the industry, knowledgeable people, but also people who are going to support you and give you the push when you need it, as opposed to shut you down for your age or whether you're a gent or a lady or whatever it may be. You know, there's a lot of spiteful people in every industry, and unfortunately there's a lot of sharks in this one too. In terms of the financial barrier, and I think that's the one most people know of and speak about more than the other barrier, because I don't think a lot of people know about that one, but the financial barrier is a tough one to break. You know, if you don't have £50,000 to £80,000 £20,000 in the bank ready to do this, even 30,000. You know, it's a difficult thing to sort of stop everything and go full time into it, because you're not going to straight away off the bat start making good profit on watches. And even then, you've got to remember, this is the kind of industry where profit isn't like other industries in the 30, 40, 50, 60%. You know, occasionally you may get lucky and make 20 to 30% on a watch, occasionally. But your average is always going to be somewhere between 7 and 11% margin across all of your watches when you add it up. It's a very small margin. You know, you've got to be turning out a lot of watches to make some serious money, or very high value, and then that's a completely different game. So what I've probably said has been very overwhelming and probably not the most encouraging of message, but it's doable. It's definitely doable. I did it with £300. So what I'm getting at is, if you don't have that kind of money to go straight into it, start off small. Start off on the side of a full-time job, which I think I said in the last video. You know, just buy things you can afford. Do as much research on those things and provide the very best service you can at that point, right? And just build it up slowly and surely. You will get there. You know, £300 will get you 4 affordable watches, and you will end up back with £350 or you know, £400 if you're lucky, and then turn that into more. You know, just keep going, and eventually you'll be at a point where you can potentially quit your job and go full time into it. But it's a long game. You know, play the long game. Do it right. Don't try and rush it. You know, that's where mistakes happen. People who come into this industry with a lot of money and start up a company, and after a year, they're gone. So don't be that person, you know, do it properly. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that covers a bit more. If you have more about that, or any of you guys or girls watching, feel free to email me specifics about this, because again, I can touch on my own experience and what I know thus far. You know, obviously, I've not been doing it for 20 years. I don't know everything, and even then you'll never know everything. So I hope I can just give you a little bit of an insight and a little bit of a guidance where I can. So thank you very much for watching. That is it for this episode. Sorry if I was speaking a million miles an hour. I've had a few coffees today and I'm a bit hyper, and also I'm exhausted. So when you combine the two, it doesn't go very well. So I apologize in advance. But thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing your questions for the next episode, and we will see you again, fingers crossed, next Thursday. Take care, look after yourself, and keep well.